Hello, my friends. So good to see you. Or not. Actually, I'm looking at me. I'd be ashamed to admit how much I like that. Nevertheless, the title of today's little stream is Have You Ever Loved Something? Now, many of us are old enough to have seen so many failed attempts to adapt to the screen or any other medium something that we've loved, and we've seen successful and unsuccessful attempts. There have been phenomenally successful efforts to turn The Lord of the Rings into a radio drama, and moderately successful attempts to turn it onto the screen. So much the case. But today, well, over the past few weeks, I've had the opportunity to experience a true labor of love. Now, it's not something that I would have labored over myself, but the labor itself is so beautiful that you almost can't overlook it. Not too long ago, again, just a couple weeks, I, on Amazon's recommendation, clicked on The Color of Magic. And it says it's season 1, but I will be surprised if it goes any further because, again, it's a labor of love. Nevertheless, The Color of Magic, entirely unbeknownst to me when I first clicked on it, I actually clicked on it because it has Sean Astin, Jeremy Irons, oh goodness, who's the other one? Tim Curry, thank you, and others who are just among my most desired and beloved of actors. And clicked on it, and interestingly was incredibly underwhelmed throughout the first hour of the 3-hour season, or whatever it is, something like that, 3 1-hour plus episodes. But then something drew me back. And the fact is that it was filmed as if it was being written or almost being read to you, but not exactly. And that's what made it so wonderful. So a little bit more watching, and I found that I really had to find out what was behind this. And Terry Pratchett. Now, I have to tell you, I was a bookstore clerk or worker, hourly worker at Barnes & Noble and Borders, two relics of the past that you might still be able to find a archaeological vestige of if you drive downtown, but for the most part, difficult to come across. And so I used to film science fiction and fantasy, partially because I like them, but I read very little of them. Interestingly enough, I just love the idea. Well, anyway, they say not to judge a book by its cover, but I very much did. As I was shelving, I judged all the books by their cover, and Terry Pratchett's books had light, silly, almost ridiculous covers on them. He was writing since about 1989, according to my information, and he seemed so light and satirical. He seemed as if he was making a goof on the world of fantasy. And while I was never that serious about fantasy, I was that much less serious about goofing. Well, anyway. It's a good cup of coffee. Anyhow, I was induced to give him a try. And Terry Pratchett, if you've never read him, I suggest you might, especially if you've enjoyed the fantasy genre and you don't mind someone lightly making fun of something that you love. He has a nice, light, witty, kind of chaving picture of a fantasy world, and does so well of it. And really, the events themselves and even the characters themselves are not so important as the tone. You just find you might like yourself, like to see yourself rather in the presence of one Terry Pratchett, who's now deceased. But the legacy which he's left behind has never been more loved than it is in this picture of Color of Magic. And that's really what I want to bring to you. I think if you were to read the Discworld books by Terry Pratchett, you wouldn't be dissatisfied. if you're of a certain mindset. I wouldn't want to say that they're objectively so amazing that everyone will like them. Certainly not. But if you like that kind of somewhat snarky, fun observations on life, then you will find it appreciable, or appreciable, rather. But what I really think is worth looking at is what it's like when someone really loves something. The filmmakers here, the actors, everything about it echoes the beautiful quality of the written work. Much unlike the work of Jackson with The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which we all got excited about because it was closer than anyone had quite been able to come before. But he didn't have that reverence that said, you might be a little bored at times, but I'm going to make something that's reflective of what I've loved in The Lord of the Rings. I do hope that someday someone's able to make something of The Lord of the Rings and something of Narnia that even close to approximate the amount of respect that The Color of Magic on Amazon Prime does for actually the first 2 books. And don't be mistaken about that. If you're going to read the books first, you have to read The Color of Magic and then The Light Fantastic, I believe it is. You just can't go wrong if you want to see someone love and respect an author's picture to the point that most of the dialogue is directly read. And I don't mean to offend you if you've really enjoyed Jackson's Lord of the Rings or Hobbit. I personally found The Hobbit so detestable I couldn't even watch past the first terrible, disgusting picture. And perhaps, like me, you were a little bit shaky on the new ones until the last one of the Last Jedi, I think, was the atrocity at hand, and just saw what it was like to see someone pull down their drawers and poop on something beautiful. The Color of Magic is the opposite of that. So I don't know if I would recommend it just as a simple fantasy show, although it is witty in its own right. But I would recommend it as what I hope to see more of in the world. And that is people who appreciate what someone's done, so much so that they're able to reproduce it in a way that's truly respectful of the source material. Well, I'm sorry that I don't have a pipe with me. I'm sorry I don't have a cob in my gob. Although, if I did, I can assure you it would be a corncob pipe, and it would be filled with Prince Albert tobacco as my new largest supply came therefrom. Hopefully I'll post again soon. But the question, if you so choose to think about and respond, if you loved anything enough to reproduce it faithfully, if you loved another person's creation, whether that be a painting or whatever it is, to truly represent not just what it's done for you, but what it is itself, to seek after the key of the artist. The reason why I ask this is I'm a pastor. You can see some of the stuff behind me. And one of my goals in life is that it comes to the Bible, the Word of God, I want to represent exactly what the text itself says. And I feel like I'm surrounded by clowns. And I mean that with the most love, because those clowns are my brothers and sisters. But surrounded by clowns who don't quite love the Word of God and the revelation, the truth of God as such, but they love what it does for them, what it makes them feel like, what maybe it makes them do or others do. So there's my question. What do you loved enough that you could set yourself aside to reproduce it in its original intent? I hope you're well. I hope you respond. And I look forward to hearing from you. And I hope the smoke continually satisfies. Have a great day and a great weekend.